Howdy, howdy all. Welcome back in to Goose Talks Film. I'm your host, Goose, and this week we are tackling the new release film Civil War, written and directed by the great Alex Garland. Now, just from the start, I apologise if my voice cuts in and out, or if I'm losing my voice, I apologise. I am still sick, unfortunately, but we'll try and get through at least 45, 50 minutes without me completely losing my voice, or worse. But yes, we are tackling the new release movie Civil War, which was released today in Australia. For some reason, IMDb and a few other websites are reporting that it doesn't get a wide release in Australia until 2 weeks from now, like the 24th or 25th or something. So hopefully that doesn't affect its box office in Australia too much, because I don't think this is going to be like, it's not going to be like a 6, 7, 8 week movie in the theatres here in Australia. So by that point, the session time will be getting quite thin. But yeah, so it's trying to describe this best. It's people are describing it as an action, which it does have action. It would definitely be one of the genres. I would put it down to drama and probably thriller, maybe like suspense to be a bit more exact, because it does keep you on your toes in more of a suspense ways than just on the edge of your seat action, like other just, generalized action movies out there. For anyone that's seen Alex Garland before, or seen his movies before, I should say, he's a very, very accomplished writer and director. He wrote 28 Days Later and Sunshine, both massive cult movies, both starring Cillian Murphy too, actually. They're both futuristic and dystopian. That's how he started his career. He was also uncredited writer for 28 Weeks Later, but he was an executive producer. He also wrote and produced Dredd, the 2012 Judge Dredd movie with Carl Urban, which I think is a phenomenal movie, and I'm very disappointed we never got a sequel to that. He also wrote, directed Ex Machina, Annihilation, Men from 2022, and obviously Civil War. And he's also he's writing and producing 28 Years Later. I think Danny Boyle was still returning to direct that. But yeah, back to Civil War. So Civil War tells the story of a journey across the dystopian future America following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. From the title, it's obviously based on Civil War. It's, from memory, one of the only movies depicting a fictional civil war in America. It's obviously a touchy subject from what's happened there over the last couple of years, and this movie was actually nearly banned. I think banned in release in America and maybe even worldwide. I'm not sure, but I do know that it was planned to be banned because they didn't want people to watch it and get any ideas and which I think is weird. Once you actually watch the movie, I think it does a really good job of kind of negating anyone wanting to do this. And I will say from the top, I am an Australian talking about a fictional movie about a fictional civil war in America in the future. So it's technically a fictional America. And I will say that, this is going to cause this movie is going to cause a lot of political discussions and blah, blah, blah. And I'm here to say I'm not going to talk about the political side of it outside of what happens in the film and its impact, because one, I don't think I'm intelligent enough to talk about it, and two, I don't really want to, because this is a movie podcast. I want to talk about the movie itself. And look, I always talk about outside influences and blah blah blah, but not talk to the political sense of what happened with Trump and his followers storming the White House a few years ago and what this could cause. But like I said, in my personal opinion, from a massively outsider perspective in Australia, I don't think this movie is going to make people want to do anything, but other people might have a different opinion on that. But yeah, just to get that out of the way, that this isn't going to be a political discussion. Obviously, of course, I'm going to bring up politics in terms of what happens in the movie. But yeah, look, I'm just not smart enough or knowledgeable enough about specifically American politics to really have an opinion on that. So if you're listening for that reason, which I'm sure is a very small percentage, if any of you, then I'm sorry you're not going to get that. You might as well turn it off now. But if you want me to dissect and talk about a phenomenal film by a great director and writer, then continue listening. I'll be much appreciated. But like I said, I loved this movie. without getting into too much detail with any spoilers or anything. But yeah, look, on Goose Talks Film, I always recommend a movie out of 3 categories. It's either go see this at the movies, wait for streaming, or don't bother at all. This is definitely go watch the movies. It's not necessarily a movie that might diminish from a watch at home, but I think you'll probably enjoy it a bit more at the movies. Great sound, which really helps. It looks great on the big screen. Some of the action and the shots and the cinematography in general looked great. An older gentleman I spoke to was also went to the movie solo afterwards. We had a quick chat, and he absolutely loved it. He loves his war movies. I think he said he was a veteran. I didn't dive into what war or anything like that, because I didn't really say the need to, but I just asked him a quick opinion on it, and he said, yeah, he loved it. He said it certain parts it depicts what civil war can do in other countries. We've seen civil wars happen in too many countries in our time. So yeah, I mean, he loved it. There was a father and son in front of me. They looked like they enjoyed it because they both kind of looked at each other, just nodded. But yeah, look, go see the movies. Go support your local theatre. This would be a great experience at the movies. The budget was $50 million, but I would have guessed more because the action sequences, it looks great. The sound is phenomenal. Excuse me. A great cast, not like an A-list cast, but names you'll definitely know. Kirsten Dunst is the female lead. And there's also a lot of faces you will see, if it be character actors or, excuse me, actors like Nick Offerman that aren't, known to be in serious roles. That was until his role in excuse me. Excuse me, I apologise for that. Okay, sorry about it. Just had to pause my recording for a second while I got my voice back. So apologies. Yes, so The Last of Us, which Nick Offerman was in, he's shown what dramatic chops he can have, and a bit of a spoiler, we don't see a lot of him in this, but he plays the president, but he does a good job from what you see. Without getting into the spoilers yet, look, Alex Garland, I've listed off his movies before. He's known to do dystopian movies, futuristic movies. I think Men from a couple of years ago was kind of the outsider to that genre. I mean, a lot of people have said that they feel as though that was set in the future, but I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure that was set in modern times, just with maybe futuristic ideas. I wasn't a big fan of Men, because that was kind of his step into kind of almost full horror. It was kind of towing the line between thriller and horror. Great acting and stuff. Wasn't a big fan of the execution and whatnot of it. But Ex Machina from 10 years ago is a phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it, it deals with androids and robots and stuff, and it's fantastic. Annihilation I wasn't a huge fan of, but that was a beautiful movie to look at. And I think it tried to be too smart in its execution and its kind of twist ending. And yeah, look, I've already said, like, his writing credits for 28 Days Later, Sunshine, and Dread, all like phenomenal movies. Like, they really are like great movies. And Dread is among like my favorite action movies, and that also deals with futuristic, not only futuristic time setting, but futuristic ideas and whatnot. And Garland is known to use a lot of the same actors in a lot of things. I think the record is Sonoya Mizuno. She is in all of his directorial movies. So I think she's in the 5. So one of them's a TV show, Devs. So she's in Ex Machina, Annihilation, Devs, Men, and now Civil War. Oscar Isaac and Nick Offerman have all been in 2 each, and quite a big list, but he's an actor that likes to use the same actors. And Alex Garland has actually surprisingly stated that after this movie, Civil War, he intends to step back from directing and only focus on writing, which I think is a big loss for the film industry and quite disappointing. Just his directing is just great. Even if the movies that I didn't like, it didn't always come down to the directing being the problem. But as long as we still get him being a part of the film in writing, then that's good enough for me. But look, this pretty much all I'll say about the movie, without getting into spoilers yet. It's there is, I will put a warning out. There is some confronting scenes, dealing with war and flashbacks of Kirsten Dunst's character from all the wars she's seen. There are quite a few dead bodies and a lot of realistic war scenes. So if any of those things trigger you or make you upset or uncomfortable, then I don't recommend this movie for you, because it is a very realistic movie. And I don't know if I'm a massive fan of, I understand why they're saying it, but in terms of, in the plot for this movie, in all the marketing is saying it's a futuristic movie. Like, it is, obviously, but it is also a fictional America. So, like, I mean, they could have just said in a fictional version of the United States, this, and this. But look, I'm not in marketing, so that's fair enough. But what I always say is the acting's amazing. I recommend go see the movies, go support your local movies. We have certain parts of the year where not a lot of the big movies are coming out, so we've got to make sure we support our local theaters and go to as many movies as we can, if it be little to medium to big budget movies. I love going to my local cinema. They're all starting to get to know me now. They're all fantastic people at the Open Hill Cinema. Locally owned, locally ran. They all know their stuff. I love having a good chin wag with the workers after the movie, them asking me what my opinion is and if I'd recommend it. So make sure you go support your local theatres, even if you live in the city. Go support any theatre. Try and maybe to an independent one, but any cinema you can, it all helps to the same cause. I'm a big advocate for it, obviously. Covering a film podcast, I think I'd have to be. I love the movie experience. I'm very lucky that I have one locally. A lot of other small towns don't. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I will say on Civil War before I jump into the spoiler territory. So here is your spoiler warning. So we're now able to delve deeply into the movie. And before we do that, I will read the full synopsis. It has already been released, which is wicked. Usually when I see a movie on release day, which is usually a Thursday, I don't have access to the full plot. It hasn't been released yet, but luckily it has. It's not as big as some other ones, so it might leave out a few things, but overall it's going to include all the major stuff. So please bear with me, like I said, with my voice. If it cuts in and out, I apologise. I'll try and do my best. In the near future, a rapidly escalating multi-party civil war engulfs all of the United States, which has become a dystopian dictatorship under its president, who is currently in his third term. Renowned and hardened photojournalist Lee Smith rescues Jesse, a young photographer who idolizes Lee from a suicide bombing in New York City. Lee and her colleague Joel wish to travel to Washington, D.C. to exclusively interview the president before the rebel factions advance onto the Capitol by the 4th of July. Despite trying to dissuade the group that the trip is highly dangerous, their mentor and veteran reporter Sammy joins them to head the front lines at Charlottesville, Virginia. While Jessie tags along as she inspires to become a war journalist herself. Lee, Joel, and Sammy guide Jessie in the field as she experiences for the first time the front lines of urban warfare between the military and the resistant militias. Following stops at a refugee camp in an idyllic small town, as well as evading a rogue sniper, the four meet up with their Hong Konga reporter colleagues Tony and Bohai. However, the six encounter extremist and nationalist militia soldiers who execute civilians and bury them in a mass grave. The soldiers kill Tony and Bohar before Sammy rescues his colleagues by running over two of the soldiers. Jesse is traumatized and Sammy is mortally wounded during their escape. He later succumbs to his wounds as the group reaches the Western Forces camp in Charlottesville, where some generals have surrendered prior to their arrival. The group accompany the WF as they storm Washington, D.C., with Jesse being more proactive in covering the gunfire, while Joel helps Lee through a PTSD episode. At the heavily guarded White House, a firefight occurs between the WF and the Secret Service. Lee is killed, saving Jesse from the crossfire, to which she photographs the death of her mentor. The WF soldiers find the president hiding in the Oval Office, where enraged Joel forgoes his interview for a final quote. The president begs Joel to not let the soldiers kill him before Jesse takes a photo of his summary execution. During the credits, the developing photo of the WF soldiers smiling and standing over the president's corpse appears. So that is Civil War. Look, that covered like most of the stuff that will happen, but I'll try and bring up some things that weren't brought up. What I will say, in watching the movie, because it's literally 3-4 minutes before the movie ends when Lee jumps in front of Jesse to save her, it's not entirely clear if she dies or not, because Obviously, Lee dives in front of her, gets shot in the back, collapses while Jesse takes the photos. It's kind of all silent as Jesse's probably shell-shocked. Joel comes in, taps her on the shoulder to follow him. He goes and finds that the soldiers have the president about to kill him. He said, no, wait. Asks for the final quote. She takes a photo as he's being executed and the movie ends. But then I thought about it afterwards in the end credits and I thought, well, the conversation that Jesse and Lee had earlier was Jesse asked Lee, would you photograph me if I got killed or as I died? And Kirsten Dunst Lee pretty much says, what do you think? You don't get a definitive answer if she would say yes or no. And I think probably leans to more the yes. And I think that makes sense with Jesse taking photos of Lee being shot. That kind of cements the fact that Lee's dead. And probably Joel's reaction where he looks absolutely devastated but wants to get the job done. And look, that tackles what a lot of interviews I've seen of war journalists and photographers where they've had to put the job first and they've seen people like soldiers getting shot and in pain, asking for help, and they just have to ignore them and just keep going with their job. That'd be really hard in this. Really does a good job of really showing what it would really be like as a journalist. That's kind of what it focuses on more than the Civil War itself, is just war in general and what happens to certain people and what these journalists do in their job and how crazy it is and whatnot. I think that's like not the sole focus, but the main focus of the movie for sure. The character work in this movie is phenomenal. All of the cast is brilliant. Like, this is a stacked cast in terms of talent. You have Kirsten Dunst as Lee, Wagner Moura as Joel, Kaylee Spaney as Jesse, hope I got that right, Stephen McKinley Henderson as Sammy, Nick Offerman, and, I mean, as the president, he's only in literally 2 scenes. You have a cameo from Jesse Plemons, who plays an unnamed soldier, who is the one that's pretty much telling the soldiers to dump all the civilian bodies. So he was phenomenal in that scene. Like, my heart was going a million miles a minute. He did an amazing job in that, where he's asking them where they're from. And they say, Colorado and Missouri, and he's like, yep, those are American states. And unfortunately, I think his name's Tony, I think it is, the one from Hong Kong. He is, in complete shock that his friend and colleague just got killed. And he says Hong Kong, and Jesse Plemons goes, Hong Kong, China, bang, and shoots him. It's like, wow. And then, that whole scene was just so tense. Like, I was really I got, even though I don't really have long nails, I got imprints in my palm from squeezing my hand so much because I was just on edge. Just done so well. Jesse Plemons was horrifying, and a lot of people don't know Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons are actually married in real life. So I wonder what that scene would have been like in the scenario that it's set in and how full on it is, and if they're able to bounce off each other, maybe even console each other after the scene, because it is quite a full on scene, especially with the young Jesse falling into the pit of dead bodies. Like, very gruesome stuff, very full on. What I will say, I have found a map of all the division, like all the different factions in America. There's actually 4. There's the Loyalist States, Western Forces, the Florida Alliance, and New People's Army. They don't do a great job at differentiating who's who, and that might be the point. So we see our main characters, the journalist, kind of be chummy with different sides, like everyone, and everyone's kind of okay because they're journalists, except for Jesse Plemons' character. They're kind of, because they saw shit they weren't meant to see, kind of just wrong place at the wrong time. He was kind of the only soldier we saw that was antagonistic towards journalists for obvious reasons. But there's this one scene where the journalists are with these soldiers and they're in casual clothing, like Hawaiian shirts and stuff, with just army gear, like vests and stuff over the top. And they're fighting people in the building that are wearing this a light green camouflage suit. And then we see later on in the same camouflage suits, and these 2 blokes, the sniper and the spotter, have painted fingernails and colored hair. So I'm not entirely sure who was who in what scenes, and that might be the point, is these journalists don't technically have a side, they're just covering what's happening. In terms of the president, Nick Offerman's part, he's obviously kind of pushed as the bad guy because they mention, I think, a couple of times that he's pretty much a dictator and he's in his third term, which means that they've changed rules, or he's changed the rule, because we all know the US president can only serve 2 terms and he's in his third. So that tells you that there's some bullshit going on with him. The Western Forces seems to be the main party, like the WF, like they're the ones that storm the White House and all that. And they're only 2 states. So I don't know if they've gotten help from the Florida Alliance and the New People's Army and then the Loyalist states. I mean, that kind of is a bit confusing. That's kind of my probably biggest and maybe only major issue with the movie. But that might be Garland's point, that it didn't matter because the journalists were just filming what's happening and they weren't on any side. So that could be the point, because it shows Joel being chummy with these guys in the Hawaiian shirts and then obviously being okay with the Western Forces Army when they get there after Sammy dies. But that's probably my biggest gripe, unfortunately, with the movie. But it didn't ruin my experience by any means. And I forgot to say at the start that I didn't see really a lot of marketing for this movie. I think I only saw like a 30, 40 second trailer for it on YouTube. And it actually caught my eye. I didn't press skip, which, rarely ever happens. I continued watching it because I was enthralled and saw it only goes for like 40 seconds. So I watched it and I thought, oh, this looks pretty good. And then I found out it was by Garland and read about it a bit more, but I didn't watch any lengthy trailers. I haven't really delved into it too much. That probably helped my experience with watching it for sure. All the characters I thought were very captivating, and the way they did the character development was really good. We saw Kirsten as Lee was very blank-faced a lot of the time. She was very, can't think of the word, like she's very reserved. She's clearly, the job is the only thing she's got, and she's very adamant that she doesn't want Jesse involved because she knows what's going to happen, and we like to find out that she, like Kirsten Dunst, gets PTSD and everything from all she's seen, because we've seen her very, very small glimpses, but we've seen the stuff that she's seen. Like we've seen people getting set on fire and civilians being shot and executed. So that was just a nice little snippet of what she's seen, and that kind of justifies, obviously, why she's got PTSD, especially when the Western Forces are taking over the White House. And I thought Sammy was a great character. He was kind of a really good bridge between the other 3 characters, because this is pretty much, like, it sounds silly, but it's pretty much a road trip movie of these 4 journalists traveling to their destination through a very dangerous place, America at the time that the movie's set. Lee, Kirsten Dunst's role is very, like I said, reserved. She never really smiles. She's very hard on Jesse. Then you have Joel, who's kind of, he literally admits he's kind of turned on by war and what it looks like, and he loves covering it. He also smokes a lot of weed and gets drunk a lot, so it's showing you that he kind of is probably bottling up a lot of emotions. But he also seems like he's having a lot of fun a lot of the time, and he's just like an easy-going guy. Jessie, she's kind of a bit misled. She wants to be a photojournalist, but she finds it very hard with all these things that come across until the final scene that, she struggles a lot and she won't deal with it, and they kind of have to protect her, so that kind of puts them at risk. And then Sammy is the old veteran. He's the mentor. He kind of steps in when Lee's being too hard on Jesse, and he also tells them not to go confront Jesse Plemons' character because he knows it's going to end. Then when he jumps in the car and, because you completely forget about Sammy in that scene with Jesse Plemons and all the dead bodies, because you're so enthralled and into what's happening with Jesse Plemons' character. Is he going to shoot him? What's he going to do? He's a bloody unhinged character. Then boom, Sammy comes through with the car and hits all the soldiers and saves them. And then he gets shot and unfortunately dies a short time later. When he did that, I almost jumped out of my seat and chair, because it was done so well that Sammy was the guy that saved him, but they did it in a way that you forgot about Sammy because you were so just the intensity was pulling you in too much that you didn't think about Sammy coming for the save. I'm like, what's going to happen? Like, is Jesse Plemons going to let them leave? Is he going to accidentally fall in the pit? Like, what's going to happen? And then Sammy saves him. I thought, oh wow, this is great. Like, there's a mean about it being a thriller. Like, a few of these scenes are like that. It's pulling you in and it's really being intense and stuff. So, massive shout out to Jesse Plemons. He's in one scene and he's kind of one of the things I've been thinking about after seeing it. So, that tells you a great performance from, 5-10 minutes of screen time. Awesome stuff. Like I said, it was an unexpected road trip movie, but that's essentially what it is. It's not an original formula, but a formula that isn't overdone, where these characters are traveling through a dangerous... a lot of zombie movies, it's a very typical zombie movie cliche, but outside of that subgenre, there's not heaps of it where these characters are in a car or in a vehicle of some description and they're traveling through a country or a state or something, and they come across all these different situations. Zombieland is a good example of that in the zombie subgenre. The Domestics with Tyler Hoechlin is a good underrated one. That's a good horror road trip movie, a horror thriller probably lean into, but yeah, it's a very unexpected road trip movie. The cinematography and the shots and all that are captured in this movie are just incredible. So it does a really, really good job of when you're in the action and you're in these war scenes, it feels like you're watching like real life footage from somewhere in, not a body cam because it's not like really shaky handy cam type footage, but in terms of it feels like you're with these people while they're in a war situation. But then there's these great long shots, there's this great establishing shots, beautiful shots involving like flowers and like flames from trees being on fire, and yeah, it was really, really good to look at. And then when it comes to the war scenes, it really had you on edge, like you were really there. So it was a good contrast of the different techniques and the different scenarios that these characters are in. And in the Jesse Plemons scene is a good one where it capturing everyone's different emotions and all the emotions are different. So Kirsten Dunst's character Lee is pretty much, she's not frozen in fear, but she's probably the one with the head screwed on the most, that she's telling everyone to answer the questions, be clear, blah, blah, blah. She's kind of looking down, but kind of looking around at everyone else. Joel's kind of trying to be a smartass and trying to not outwit, but try and charm Jesse Plemons' character to let them go, and it doesn't turn out that way. Then you have Tony, the Hong Kong reporter. He's essentially frozen in fear and he can't speak because he's trembling that much. Then you have Jessie, who's frozen in fear that she's not talking pretty much at all, and then when she does, she's looking at the ground, she's looking at them to save her. And then Jesse Plemons' character is he's very chilled, relaxed, but very menacing. He's moving his gun around purposefully to kind of keep them on their toes. Just scenes like that, like in terms of directing and cinematography, just amazing stuff. Like, I can't talk enough about the directing and the cinematography. Like, they're definitely the highlights. And you're more, I talked about it a little bit at the start of the podcast, but you're more involved with the characters and what they're going through in this experience of Civil War than the political side of it. So if you're not really a political person, you don't like politics, you don't like watching anything about it, you don't like listening to it, I still think you would enjoy this movie because overall the Civil War is the underlying plot, but this really is a character-driven movie. As I said, we're following these 4 characters through a road trip, but like this movie definitely has great scenes of war and great action. It cost $50 million, and like I said, I would have maybe guessed it cost more. It's A24's most expensive movie at $50 million. The next one closest to that was Beau Was Afraid with Joaquin Phoenix, which was released last year. That was $35 million. So, yeah, I hope it pays off A24. They were ballsy enough to take this on and distribute it. So, I'm really hoping that it does well at the box office. And, yeah. I'm struggling to talk about because I just enjoyed the movie, and I think I was enjoying the movie experience so much I forgot to take mental notes. What I do is I take mental notes, and as soon as I get to my car from the cinema, I'll write all these notes down in my notepad, and I'll usually have about 15, 20, but I've only written about 7 because I was so into actually the movie experience, which tells you a good thing. Same thing happened when I covered The Iron Claw. Probably because I was also watching it with my wife, because most of the time I watch these movies by myself when I'm going to cover them on the podcast. And I was just, in the experience of just watching a movie at the cinema that I forgot to take mental notes, so it gets a bit hard to talk about. But, there's some, like, really, really great scenes, and the bit when they stormed the White House was really well done. The aerial shots they did with, all the firing going off in the background and all the helicopters and all the bombs and stuff going off, which is really great. And that's what I was saying about the budget being 50 million. I think, they spent their money very wisely, is what I would say. Just like I said, wish there was a bit more clarity with the states working together and who was who. But like I said, that might have been a purpose thing. But the character development was, like I said earlier, very, very good. We see Jessie, she seems to be easily influenced when the two cars are driving next to each other and Tony, crazy bastard, jumps from his car to their car and she copies but then goes to the other car, and that obviously leads to the Jesse Plemons scene. That she's easily influenced, but she's also like does things on the fly without really thinking, because that obviously led to some scary shit happening and two people getting killed. Although they might have been stopped and whatnot by Jesse Plemons and his soldiers anyway. But I would have liked to have seen more of Nick Offerman as the president, because I thought he was doing a decent job. Like, we only saw him for maybe 30, 40 seconds on the TV. We hear him talking a little bit as well, just audio. And then we see him in the White House, in the Oval Office at the end of the movie for about a minute. So, he did his job, and he come off as the bad, like, dictatorship character that they tried to tell us. Like, he did that the best of his ability with, a minute and a half screen time. I thought the scenes of Joel drinking and smoking a lot, we saw him kind of... There was one scene where it kind of come off as a bit creepy, where he was kind of flirting with Jessie a bit and saying that if he needed him to stay up with her and blah, blah, blah. But, I don't know if that's creepy or he was just flirting, because later on Tony says that Joel, when he was really smashed the night before they left, he was flirting with Jessie. So that kind of confirms that Lee and Joel are just colleagues and they're not a relationship, because they kind of left that a bit in the air when it comes to that. But, Rob Hardy's cinematography was just phenomenal stuff. Look, I don't know if this is going to be focused at the Oscars or not come, February, March next year. One, it's released early. They're not always received well, but Everything Everywhere All at Once was released, I think, end of February, March of 22. So fingers crossed, it could happen. And because it is very, it is a touchy subject of a movie for some people. And like I said, a lot of people wanted to ban this. So I don't know if it's going to get the love it should. But the cinematography and the sound are two things that need to be nominated next year. I'm only rallying and campaigning for those two categories specifically. But I think Alex Garland should be rewarded with a bit of directing and writing love. Probably more so the directing. But we'll wait and see if that happens or not. But yeah, look, I'll start to wind down the review here. Got a bit of trivia after the final review as well. So we'll still make 40 plus minutes. I'm starting to struggle to talk a bit, but yeah, look, I hope I've covered enough for Civil War. I really can't express enough how much I enjoyed this. I haven't probably enjoyed a movie on the podcast like this since probably The Iron Claw. The Zone of Interest, I respect the filmmaking technique, but I wouldn't say I enjoyed it because of the subject matter and what it dealt with and the way it was dealt with and whatnot. But they're all great films in their own ways. But here on Goose Talks Film, we have 4 categories that are rated out of 5, which are directing, writing, acting, and cinematography. And that goes towards its final score out of 20, which will then go towards the end of year top 10 list and bottom 10 lists, or bottom 10 lists, where all the movies with their scores will be rated if they make it to the top 10, or the bottom 10 if they're really bad. And like I said, the reflection of the top 10 and bottom 10 list at the end of the year doesn't mean it's my personal 10 or bottom 10 of the year. It might sound silly, but all these are all rated and reviewed as I've watched them I don't really have time to sit on it or anything like that. And they're all rated from the 4 categories, so it might not reflect my personal opinion on them or rewatchability or anything like that. And not all movies will be included. Movies like June Part 2, where unfortunately it was a very busy period for me and I didn't get to see it at the movies, so it probably won't be covered, and that would probably be on the top 10 list from what I'm hearing. But yeah, we'll start with the directing. Look, I've already spoke heaps about Garland and the specific directing he did in this movie. Just the Jesse Plemons, I keep bringing it up, but the Jesse Plemons scene alone was just phenomenally done. And also the scene when they're in that town where it doesn't feel like anything's going on. And those towns exist in a lot of civil wars in different countries from what I've heard and from what I've read, which really surprised me that, yeah, this little town that all the shops were normal, like everyone seemed normal, but there were still soldiers on the roofs and all that. So they were pretty much Switzerland in this situation where they weren't getting involved. They didn't want to be involved and they didn't care what happened as long as they were safe and where they do a bit of shopping and whatnot. There's good dialogue between Sammy and Lee where Lee says, "Oh, this is everything I've forgotten." And Sammy says, "Well, this is everything I remember." And that was like awesome dialogue between the two. And I'll get onto that with the writing as well. But just those scenes, great character development, but also building like the realism on Civil War and stuff as well, what people lose and what they miss out on and sometimes never get back. But the directing, was, yeah, it's just great. A 4.25 out of 5. I'm happy with that rating. It's by any means not the best directed movie I've seen ever, but it'll definitely be up there this year. I can guarantee that because a 4.25 for directing is a very good rating for me. And we're going to the writing, which I always say, because I like to think I'm a novice writer, and it's always what I wanted to be, was a screenwriter / author. So I'm always a lot harder on the writing. And yeah, the writing I'll give a 4 out of 5. And for everyone that listens to every episode or most episodes knows that that's a rarity on here. A 4 out of 5 writing means it's phenomenal. And I don't know if the movie will get 5 out of 5, but we'll see. But the writing, yeah, like I said, the dialogue, the progression and the tone of the movie goes really well. It's not like some movies where it's stop, start, like action, bit of drama, character building, blah, 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 blah. It kind of doesn't work because it's too stop starts. You're kind of like, oh, are we going? No, oh, it's like being in a manual car with someone who's know how to drive it. Okay, mate. But this movie does a really good job of it making sense of the 25%, 50%, 100%, 75%, 50%, 25%, 50%. You know, it really does the tone building and the dialogue and the character development from some of the characters we don't even see, like Sammy and stuff. We don't know his backstory or anything like that. We know he's an old timer, he's a mentor, but we know that he's very passionate. He pretty much wants to die a journalist because he's walking with a walking stick, but he's going to the front lines. He's also very caring. He's obviously a great mentor. And yeah, just things like that. And what they did with Jesse and Joel as well, with the scenes they showed us of them with not heaps of dialogue, was enough. And we got to care for these characters and understand them as people and journalists. And yeah, awesome. Acting kind of goes into what I just said, really. So 4 out of 5 for the acting, which is really, really good score. I don't know. I think maybe Iron Claw might have topped this or been the same, but very rarity for a 4 out of 5. All these actors killed it. Kirsten Dunst's best performance I've seen. A lot of people say Melancholia is her best performance, or even her appearance in, I think it was season 2 or 3 of Fargo. But yeah, this, in my opinion, is her best performance, and she might be a bit dry and a bit blank. Not blank, but a bit dry and not very expressionist, but that works for that. That's her character, and it really affects more. And when she gets killed, and when you find out she gets killed, it's kind of like, oh damn, like she sacrificed herself. The person she sacrificed herself for got a photo of her dying, but it's kind of poetic in a way because she pretty much admits that she would have done the same thing. But yeah, like, and the actor, I can't remember his name, but the actor that played Sammy, like, I was devastated when he died, because it's not only because he saved them in a heroic moment, but he was just a really kind of like that grandpa character that you kind of hold on to in these movies, because they kind of make you feel as though everything's going to be okay. And he does that for the characters in the film as well. Now to the cinematography. Now, I'm usually pretty, I'm not overly generous, but I'm also not super strict on this category either. But cinematography is kind of like, certain movies will probably bounce between 3 and 4. Like, well, probably 3 and 3.75 is kind of an average. As long as I can see what's going on and there's really cool shots, blah, blah, blah. But then you have the movies that really might not have worked with a different cinematographer or a different cinematographer and director duo, because some of these shots, like I said, and you can see what's the unique and amazing thing about these war scenes is it, like I said, it makes you feel as though you're with these characters in this war scenario, getting shot at and buildings exploding and stuff. But you can clearly see what's going on. It's not shaky cam, but they just perfected the way of making you feel as though it's there, but you being able to see what's going on. So it's not handy cam, it's not shaky cam, it's none of that bullshit. It just, yeah, awesome balance. And that is so hard to do in a war movie, but they nailed it. Massive props. It's not a 5 out of 5, but it's a 4.75. Look, to get a 5 out of 5 cinematography has to be beautiful to look at and just amazing. But this 4.75, I did think about maybe a 5, but I wasn't strongly feeling. Sorry, wasn't feeling that strong to give it a 5 out of 5. But a 4.75, I'm definitely comfortable with it. Fully deserves it, and that brings its a final score up to 17 out of 20, which is fucking high. But I'm happy with that. I'm going to stick with it like I always do. I don't ever recant any of my reviews because, like I said, Argyle was my first ever review on this podcast at the start of the year, the first week of Feb. And if I was to have my time again, it would not have the high score that it has now. I mean, it's not a super high score, but it's definitely higher than it should be. But since then, I've gotten a bit better, gone a bit harder when I should be, a bit harsh. But I'm happy with this rating. Yeah, please let me know what you think of this movie. If you watched it, please let me know in the comments or in the comments on Facebook or YouTube or DMing or leave it in a review. Whatever you want to do. I'm really excited to see what people's opinions are once this gets out to more people and once it's been out longer. Like I said, it is opening day today, so not many people would have seen it. And yeah, we'll quickly jump into the trivia. There's not a lot of it because that's the only thing with new release movies is there's not heaps from the start. But actors Nick Offerman and Jesse Plemons weren't known to be a part of the project until the first trailer dropped in December 2023. Plemons even denied the rumor that he was in the film earlier that year. That's kind of cool. Because Nick Offerman and Jesse Plemons both, you can characterize their performances as cameos. You see a lot more of Jesse Plemons, and also because his scene's a lot more memorable, as you've heard me bring it up probably 8 times in the podcast. But that's really cool. I didn't know that. That, like I said, I didn't know a lot about this movie before I watched it, but that's cool. I like when they can pull that off. Costing $50 million, this is A24's most expensive film, surpassing Beau Was Afraid at $35 million. Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, I really hope that A24 makes money from this. I really, really do. Alex Garland told a reporter at the premiere that the pairing of California and Texas was in part to obfuscate the politics, more importantly, that these two states put aside political differences to challenge an unconstitutional, fascistic, and corrupt president who is killing American civilians. He said, "Are you saying extremist politics would always remain more important than a president of this sort? That sounds crazy to me." Interesting. One of the several stories behind why Missouri is known as the Show Me State suggests that the nickname originated in the mining camps of Leadville, Colorado, due to an extended miners' strike in the area during the mid-1890s. Missourian miners from the lead districts of southwest Missouri had been imported to take the places of the strikers. The Joplin miners were unfamiliar with Colorado mining methods and required frequent instructions. Pit bosses began saying, "That man's from Missouri. You have to show him." Oh, there you go, the Show Me State. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. The film's American release date is April 12th, 2024. The real American Civil War began exactly 163 years before that. That's really cool. I didn't know that, obviously, as a non-American, but that's cool they picked that date. Yeah, wow. Kaylee Spaney, Nick Offerman, Sonoya Mizuno, and Stephen McKinley Henderson all appeared in depths. Like I said, he loves using the same actors, which is really great. So that pretty much brings the podcast to an end. Just like to apologise, I was meaning to do a double feature this weekend. I was meant to see Godzilla X Kong yesterday, but I was so exhausted after work and being sick and having a really busy day. I just couldn't bring myself to have to rush from work and go to the movie in time because it started just after work. So I apologise, I won't be able to see it. Another Session Times match up with when I'm free this weekend. So unfortunately, don't think I'm going to cover Godzilla X Kong, which is really disappointing. I always get sick at the wrong time. It's this time of year in Australia, so everyone's getting sick. It sucks, but hopefully, I start to rest up and I will watch the first Iron Man, which will be released next week, and hopefully another double feature. Hopefully, I'm feeling better, but the second movie for the double feature next weekend will be Rebel Moon Part 2. So it's a movie I can watch at home because it's on Netflix. So I can kind of watch it when I feel better. I can watch it on my couch, maybe late at night. I don't have to kind of rush to go see it. So that will be my benefit. And then the following week, hopefully, cover Abigail. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. If you're still listening this far, I do appreciate all the support and all the reviews and all the follows and stuff across different platforms. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll leave it there, guys. And as always, make sure you watch those movies. I'll catch you later.